I go way back with my next guest, all the way back to our Kansas City days, myself on sports radio, and he at the Kansas City Star. You have read him for years covering the NFL. You now read him as a senior columnist for the NFL.com, and you see him on NFL Network. My friend Jeffri Chadiha joining us this morning on the show. Jeffri, good morning, my friend.
Yeah, good morning to you, man. And we also share the same agency, so one more, common bond between us.
One more connection. That's how you got in this show, isn't it?
That's right. You got to take care of my brothers, man. You got to take care of each other.
So let me ask you about this John Harbaugh situation, because a couple of weeks ago it sounded like they were going to part ways. Now suddenly they're not. What changed, and do you believe John Harbaugh is coming back to Baltimore in 2019, no questions asked?
Oh, I do believe that. And, look, I was out there when they lost the Pittsburgh Steelers about a month ago now, or maybe 6 weeks ago, and they were 4-5, and they were falling apart. And at that point, Lamar Jackson was a gimmick player who would come in for a few plays and run around and do a few interesting things, and that was, that's what they were. And ever since that point, they've always had a good defense, but Lamar Jackson has caught fire. And they found an identity in running the football and playing good defense. It feels a lot like 2000 all over again over there because, their offense a little bit better. They're actually, I think, a top 15 offense right now. But Lamar Jackson has been a revelation. That defense has proven that defense can still win games in the NFL right now. And John Harbaugh deserves a ton of credit for that. He's found a way to energize his team coming down the stretch when it looked like they were ready to fall apart.
On the other side of that equation is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Ravens win and they're in. The Steelers need the Ravens to lose. And so there's all of this anger in Pittsburgh about another lost season, about not getting back to a Super Bowl, and about Mike Tomlin. How much blame do you put at Mike Tomlin's feet for what has happened with the Steelers this year?
Oh, look, he's the head coach, so he's going to get some blame, but I give him a lot of credit for what he's dealt with over there because the Le'Veon Bell issue plagued this team for the better part of 2.5 months at the start of the year. Antonio Brown had all kinds of drama going on with him. The quarterback has said some things in public that they've had to deal with. The defense was really bad at the start of the year, and now they're a top 10 defense. So I think people see the big headlines and see the big stories and see that fake punt last week against the Saints and want to bury Mike Tomlin for that. But I think he's done a fairly good job of dealing with a team that for some reason has become a running soap opera. Does he encourage some of that with the way he coaches and allows players to be themselves and say certain things? Yes, but I also watched this team play the last couple of weeks, and I thought that even that Saints game, I thought that if they got in the playoffs, they'd be a tough out because they look like they were ready to play football now.
I agree. Jeffri Chadiha joins us from NFL.com and NFL Network, which is what is so maddening about the Steelers, is that when they have a lot on the line, they play their best and can play with anybody. When they don't, they oftentimes screw things up. And so how do we make sense of a team that is so Jekyll and Hyde like that?
Well, it's hard. It's hard. And, some of it is just, I think over time in the NFL, it's hard to sustain a high level of excellence. And my sense of it is, I think one thing I do knock Tomlin for is that he's developed some kind of obsession with the Patriots over the last couple of years. And I think he started to feel as if it was just them and the Patriots always playing for the AFC crown. And that can lead to lapses in concentration. It can lead to, players getting caught up in not being focused every week. They seem to always be ready for the big games, to your point. But it seems like those moments, this season especially, you look at the start of the year, and I'm sure they're regretting that tie with the Browns now.
Yeah,
they're regretting the way they played the Chiefs early on when they had a ton of mistakes in that game that cost them. Two of those games, and even the 4th and 5 play, it seemed like why would you call that play when you've got all these weapons on offense? You've been moving the football. If you're going to go for it, then go for it. And the way they responded to it afterwards, I think they got the first down, and dropping the mic and all that stuff. It's just like they are an interesting team. They're a fun team for me to watch, but again, it's hard to make sense of them at times.
Yeah, if they get a win instead of a tie over the Browns, or a win over the Raiders, or a win over the Broncos, any of those go in their direction, they're not worried about having to get help to get into the playoffs. The Green Bay Packers have fired Mike McCarthy for much of the same reason people are upset with Mike Tomlin. Big expectations, and they haven't been back to a Super Bowl in a long time. And so now we hear Jim Caldwell, Chuck Pagano's names thrown out there around Green Bay. Do you sense that the Packers will go safe and go with a guy that has head coaching experience like a Pagano or a Caldwell? Or do you think that they go off the board a little bit, a guy that doesn't have experience as a head coach?
You know, I think they have to go with head coaching experience. I don't see that great coordinator out there who is going to be able to walk in and be what Sean McVay was in Los Angeles, for example. And really, the bigger issue is you have to have somebody who can deal with Aaron Rodgers. And you know, someone told me earlier this year about how that team was affected by his absence last year when he got hurt, and how ticket sales went down, and how the ratings weren't watching on TV as much, they weren't coming to the games as much, and just that front office realized how much Aaron Rodgers meant to the Green Bay Packers, and I think there was some arrogance in how the front office dealt with him in terms of not giving him more weapons and not trying to take care of him. So I think that there is now an overcorrection going on in Green Bay where they're trying to do things to make him happy. And I just find it hard to believe they're going to hire a coach who he's not going to be able to coexist with. So you're better off having a veteran coach who's been around the block who he's going to respect, as opposed to somebody who's coming in who's got to prove himself.
That's really interesting. I saw a report over the weekend about how the Patriots assistant coaches might be preparing for an exodus, because if Brady's getting older and there could be a future ownership change between Bob Kraft and Jonathan Kraft, his son, or at least more day-to-day operations taken over by Jonathan, maybe the assistant coaches go, okay, the gravy train is over, and so perhaps Flores, Josh McDaniels, Nick Caserio front office could all take jobs elsewhere. Do you foresee that happening in the offseason?
You know, that'd be an interesting thing to see happen. Right now, if you ask me, I don't see that happening, just because they've had such a run there, and Brady's made it clear he wants to be back next year, and Belichick's not going to go anywhere presumably until Brady's gone. And even McDaniels stayed there because there seemed to be the implication that he'd be able to run the team once Belichick moved on. So there's a lot of pieces in place there that would tell me that there would not be this huge shakeup there. But you know, I have to wonder how Josh McDaniels feels about things, given how the Colts are doing, because he really blew an opportunity to be with a good football team on the rise. But no, I don't see that happening right now, at least.
Jeffri Chadiha joins us this morning here on the show, NFL Network, NFL.com. This Justin Herbert news remaining at Oregon is huge. I mean, for a team like the Giants or the Broncos or the Jaguars, these quarterback-desperate teams hoping to get at least Herbert. Now he's off the board. What does that mean for the quarterback market? What does that mean for a guy like, say, Nick Foles this offseason?
Well, it means he's going to have, at least the Eagles are going to have a lot of people asking to make deals, I would imagine. I think it puts Eli Manning in play, I think, you know, in terms of it puts Joe Flacco in a good situation. I mean, there's some quarterbacks out there who you look at and you say, well, maybe it's time for them to move on to a different place, and there's not a great free agent market, unlike last year, which was such a strange year in terms of all the quarterbacks who were available, both in free agency and the draft. It's just there's not going to be anybody out there. I guess you've got Dwayne Haskins as being the best option to the draft now. But, yeah, I don't see a ton of options. And so, yeah, you're going to see a lot of guys, a lot of retreads moving on to different teams.
Finally, both you and I are close to the Chiefs situation, having covered that team, having lived out there, obviously. We know a lot of people around that organization. Where do you think they are mentally right now? Where do you think they are emotionally?
Oof.
Because these last 2 weeks have been it's been a kick in the teeth for them.
Yeah, and I was just doing some radio with some Kansas City guys, Nate Bucati, who I'm sure you probably remember from your days in Kansas City. I think they're in a difficult place, and I've said all year long that their defense would be their undoing, and you're seeing that happen. If you go and ask people over at the Chiefs facility how they approached the season back in Week 1, their mindset was that we're just going to have to score a bunch of points and protect our defense, and they did that for 12 weeks. They found a way to be around the 40-point mark a lot and have double-digit leads and keep their defense safe. But now they lose Kareem Hunt. Sammy Watkins has been hurt. They've had 2 or 3 injuries on the offensive line. It's hard to keep playing that way. And what you're seeing is a team now that is trying to figure out who they are. You're right. I think mentally and emotionally they're going through a lot of difficult times, because if they can score in the 35, 40-point range, they're in good shape. If they're playing in the low 30s and the high 20s or below, they're in danger. And they realize that now, because that defense is so bad that going into the playoffs, they have the least balance of all the teams who might be there. And they know that even if they end up with home field advantage, that there's no quarterback out there in the AFC who's going to be scared to come into Arrowhead and play them.
Jeffri Chadiha joins us, NFL Network and senior columnist for NFL.com. The Seahawks have been an amazing story this season. Check out his latest piece on how this could be Pete Carroll's best coaching job ever, and that includes 2 Super Bowl appearances and 1 Vince Lombardi trophy. Check it out at NFL.com. Jeff, my man, it is always good to catch up. Let's do it again here during the playoffs, all right?
Same here, man. Call anytime.
All right, bud. Thanks so much. Jeffri Chadiha joining us this morning here on the DA Show.